The bank robbery story I am going to tell you today was not carried out by a thief or a criminal gang. It was carried out by a gang of police officers, and they executed it so cleanly that the investigators found nothing. All these police officers were corrupt, and many were high-ranking officers who misused their power and position to steal $10,000 from a single bank vault. Although this whole theft came to be called a perfect heist, after the robbery something happened that led to the thieves being caught one by one. So what exactly was the method that allowed all the policemen to carry out such a perfect robbery, and what happened after the theft that caused all the officers to be arrested? The story begins in the small Massachusetts town of Medford, which had a total population of 6. In the 1980s, the town was thriving because of its financial stability. People were spending good money on shopping, and small businesses and shopkeepers were earning well. The people of this town trusted one bank above all to keep their savings: the Depositor Trust Company. This was the town's biggest and most trusted bank. The bank's safety deposit boxes were always fully booked because the townspeople kept their valuables, gold, cash, jewelry, and important documents in those boxes. The bank's vault was built like a fortress. Its walls, floor, and ceiling were reinforced with iron bars, and those walls were 50 centimeters thick. The entire vault, from the door to every safety deposit box and the ceiling and walls, was fitted with state-of-the-art technology, including a hidden silent alarm that was connected directly to the police station and the alarm manufacturing company. Whenever anyone attempted to steal from the vault, that alarm would ring at the police station and at the alarm company. Although the bank management had installed a very advanced alarm security system for that era, they were completely unaware that the guardians of the law themselves would rob the bank, and that their high-security alarm system would not stop theft from inside the vault. The mastermind of this theft was Gerald Clement, who was the captain of the town's entire police force and a very corrupt officer. At the very beginning, he had been an honest police officer who wanted to do his job with integrity. But early in his career, he was posted with a senior officer named Crusher. Crusher was extremely corrupt and ran a whole network of corrupt officers under him. They covered for each other's crimes and made money together. One night, Gerald saw an officer stealing a lawn chair from a store, and when he reported it to Crusher, Crusher told him to ignore such thing. That's when Gerald realized how deep corruption ran through the entire police department. Crusher also warned Gerald that if he worked too honestly and complained about other officers, he could get into big trouble. Slowly, Gerald too became like those corrupt officers, and he began to participate in their wrongdoing. He realized how easy it was to commit theft while being a policeman, and how easy it was to erase evidence by using his position. He sank completely into corruption, and using bribes and stolen money, he rented a lavish apartment furnished with expensive furniture, electronics, and every luxury. To protect himself from trouble, he built a very good public image inside the entire police department. While he did not arrest corrupt officers involved with him, he would promptly arrest criminals for any offense. This behavior made people view him as an honest and capable officer. Once Gerald arrested a very famous gang leader, and for that he was awarded the Courage Medal, a medal given for very brave acts. Because of this medal, and his good image within the police, Gerald's rank kept rising, and he reached a position where he could easily carry out his corrupt operations and thefts. Gerald lived a double life. To the public, he was a brave officer, but privately he was deeply corrupt. This double life affected his personal life as well. Though married, he also kept a mistress. As time passed, Gerald grew bolder and more confident in his corruption and thefts. Because his rank in the police department had become quite high, he could now commit corruption and theft very easily. By 1980, Gerald was planning the biggest robbery of his life. He decided to rob the city's largest bank, but he knew that looting this bank would not be easy, and that he could not do it without the help of other corrupt officers. The officer closest to Gerald was Tommy Durden. Gerald had met Tommy 2 years earlier, and together they had committed several small thefts, including stealing the promotional examination papers in 1978. These promotion examination papers determined which officers would be promoted to different ranks. Gerald and Tommy made copies of these papers and sold each copy for $55,000 to officers seeking promotion. They sold these copies not only within the local police department, but also to other state police departments, earning a lot of money. Because of those papers, other corrupt officers rose to higher ranks, which benefited Gerald and Tommy twice over. They made good money from selling the copies, and those same promoted corrupt officers later helped them by holding high positions. By 1980, Gerald and Tommy had decided that they would do one last big strike that would ensure they never had to work again. They chose to rob the Depositor Trust Company because Tommy was already a customer and had rented a safety deposit box in the vault. They planned that Gerald and Tommy would enter the bank as customers. Tommy would go inside the vault and thoroughly scan it, gathering detailed information about the vault's layout. Tommy's plan was that once inside the vault, he would count how many safety deposit boxes there were, find out where the bank's internal safes were, where the bank's money was kept, and note every lock in their location. After collecting all this information, Tommy would report back to Gerald, who would begin assembling the team for the robbery. Gerald then recruited another corrupt police officer named Joe Banks into the team. The fourth member to join the gang was Francis O'Leary, who had previously been a gangster and was experienced in thefts. Gerald knew that unless they disabled the bank's high-security alarm system, they could not enter the vault, so they needed a fifth member skilled in electronics to disable the alarms. For this they added Bucky Bard, a professional thief, who had recently been arrested by their five-person team was now complete. Gerald, the mastermind, Tommy the corrupt police officer and Gerald's close friend, Joe Banks, another corrupt officer, Francis O'Leary, the former gangster, and Bucky the professional thief and electronics expert. Bucky's first job was to build a device that could easily disable the vault's alarm system. After building the device, the most important task was proper testing, and so they spent 2 full months testing it because they could not initially connect the device correctly to the alarm circuit. The device kept failing to block alarm signals. Tommy was assigned to test the device because, having rented a safety deposit box, he could go inside the vault. Each time he tested the device, he did so very neatly and cleverly, then came out again. While wiring the device, he remained extremely alert, because if he accidentally touched the alarm system, the alarm would sound and they would be caught. Since Gerald and the 2 other corrupt officers were constantly in uniform and patrolling in police cars, they kept an eye on everything and worked on the plan while ensuring the other 2 men were kept unaware of approaching danger. Because Gerald had a public image as an honest and brave officer, no one suspected that he had formed a team and started planning a robbery. After 2 months of testing, Tommy finally found the right wire and the correct method to connect the device to the alarm system, and with that they passed the planning's first hurdle. Next came the vault's ceiling and walls, which had been reinforced with iron bars up to 50 centimeters thick. Drilling through them with machines could take several days, so Gerald and his team decided to blow open the vault wall with dynamite. Although they chose dynamite, their biggest problem was the noise the explosion would make, which could draw attention. To handle this, they devised a very clever trick. They decided to carry out the robbery on the night the whole town was celebrating Memorial Day, when fireworks would be going off everywhere. Their reasoning was that even if anyone heard the dynamite blast, they would think it was a firecracker, and the explosion sound would be drowned out by the fireworks. Since Memorial Day celebrations would be held from Friday and the banks would be closed from Friday through Sunday for 3 days, it was a perfect opportunity. They would have 3 whole nights to carry out their plan. On the first night of Memorial Day, Friday night, 4 members of the gang, Gerald, Joe Banks, Francis, and Bucky, entered the bank, while the 5th member, Tommy, was assigned to patrol outside in a police car so that he could control police presence and ensure nothing suspicious came near the bank. Because Tommy was a high-ranking police officer, he diverted patrol cars as needed so that no police vehicles would be seen near the bank. Gerald was confident there would be no interruption to their operation, and they began their theft. After entering the bank, Gerald first told Bucky to disable the alarm system, and Bucky connects his device to the alarm system and disables. The most shocking thing about this entire robbery was that the thieves made their way into the bank through a shop located right next to it. Gerald and his gang late at night break the shop's door and climb into a loft inside the shop. On the other side of this loft's wall was the upper portion of the vault's wall, and since the loft's wall was very weak, they easily managed to break through it. After breaking this wall, they reached the part of the building that was directly above the bank vault. Now beneath Gerald and his gang's feet were some pipelines, and under those pipelines was the vault ceiling. As I already told you, the vault's walls and ceiling had been reinforced with iron rods and made up to 50 centimeters. Now Gerald and his gang had to blast through this ceiling with dynamite to get inside. To blast the ceiling with dynamite, they first started drilling holes into the ceiling with a drilling machine so they could insert the dynamites into those holes. Meanwhile, Tommy was constantly giving all the gang members inside live updates from outside. Since the drilling machine's noise could be dangerous, the gang only started drilling when Tommy gave them the green signal from outside. They were still drilling when suddenly Tommy told them over the walkie-talkie to stop drilling. He said this because he saw two men walking down the street toward the bank. As they got closer, Tommy realized they were the owners of a shop located right in front of the bank. Although most shops were closed at that hour, these two had come to drop off some goods and do some cleaning. As soon as they reached their shop, Tommy immediately went up to them and told them that some criminal activity had taken place in the area, and that it was not safe for them to stay there. Since a police officer himself was telling them this, the two shop owners did not doubt him at all and left without asking any questions. After they left, Tommy again gave the green signal inside, and the gang resumed their drilling work. Gerald and his gang drilled holes into the vault ceiling and began preparing to blast it with dynamite. Gerald knew very well that the blast noise could be heard by people nearby, so they came up with a solution. They placed sacks filled with sand over the dynamite. This had two benefits. First, the sandbags muffled the sound of the blast, and second, the weight of the sandbags made the ceiling collapse instantly after the explosion. Although the sound of the blast was still loud enough that Tommy heard it outside, because of the Memorial Day celebrations, fireworks were going off everywhere, so no one paid attention. The explosion created a huge hole in the vault ceiling, but the iron rods inside were still in. Gerald had already prepared for this too, and using the welding torch they had brought, they started cutting through the iron rods. It took them a long time to cut through the rods, but finally they succeeded and managed to get inside the vault. Inside the vault was a huge safe, where the bank kept all its cash, along with safety deposit boxes, where customers had stored their valuables. Gerald divided the gang into two teams. The first team's job was to cut open the safe with the welding torch, and the second team's job was to break open the locks of the safety deposit boxes one by one. Gerald kept his full attention on the safe, because he knew very well that most of the money would be in it. It took them almost 1 hour to cut open the safe with the welding torch, but as soon as Gerald went inside the safe, all his hopes were crushed. Inside the safe he found only US. The biggest reason behind this was that since there was a 3-day holiday coming up, the bank manager had already sent all the cash to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve had instructed every bank not to keep large amounts of cash during long holidays. Whether you call it Gerald's bad luck or bad planning, on the very night they chose for the robbery, all the cash had been sent to the Federal Reserve. But still, Gerald and his gang had all the safety deposit boxes in front of them, which contained the customers' extremely valuable belongings. From the moment they entered the bank until opening the safe, they lost track of time, and slowly daylight began to spread across the sky. Seeing this, they stopped their work and returned to their home. However, since the bank was closed due to the holiday, they still had 2 more nights left, so they decided they would return the next night and continue the loot. They were so confident because 2 high-ranking police officers were part of this robbery from the outside and the inside. If it had been ordinary thieves, they would never have dared to break into the bank again. The next night, they again entered the vault through the same shop and started opening one safety deposit box after another. Gerald and the gang were shocked to see that the safety deposit boxes contained much more cash and jewelry than they had expected. Even that night, they couldn't manage to open all the boxes, so they returned for the third night as well and completed their robbery. In these safety deposit boxes, they found USD 2 million in cash and USD 8 million in jewelry, far more than they had expected. They completed the robbery and escaped with a total of USD. After escaping, the first thing they did was divide the cash equally among the 5 of them, with each person receiving USD 400,000. Their biggest problem now was how to equally divide the jewelry. After some discussion, they decided they would sell the jewelry and then divide the money equally. Tommy told Gerald that they would sell the jewelry in the black market to some criminal gang, but until then they had to stay quiet until the matter cooled down. Gerald handed over all the jewelry to the gang's third member, Joe Banks, for 2 reasons. First, Joe was also a corrupt police officer, and second, he had a secret place to hide the jewelry. Gerald also instructed all gang members to hide their share of the cash and not to spend it yet. All the gang members reached their homes with their shares and waited to see what would happen next. The next morning, when the bank employees returned after their holiday, the bank manager unlocked the vault and couldn't believe his eye. He saw that the bank safe and all the vault boxes were open, cash, jewelry, and gold were missing, and the customers' valuable documents were scattered all over the floor. When the bank manager looked up and saw the huge hole in the ceiling, his eyes widened, and he immediately reported the matter to the FBI. The FBI, along with the local police, reached the crime scene, and the most shocking thing was that Tommy was also there with the FBI, the same Tommy who had been relaying all outside updates to the gang. Even here, Tommy was keeping an eye on the FBI investigators and trying his best to ensure that no evidence reached their hands. Gerald and his gang had executed the robbery so cleanly that they left behind no evidence or fingerprints. During the investigation, the FBI realized that this was the work of people who had detailed knowledge of the bank and surrounding areas, so their first suspicion fell on the bank employees, especially the security guards. After a few days of investigation, when nothing came up, the FBI began exploring a new angle. They learned about the corruption and thefts inside the police department, so they began monitoring some corrupt police officers, including Gerald and Tommy. Another reason Gerald and Tommy came under suspicion was that they were both on duty the night of the robbery. When the FBI questioned Gerald about where he was that night, he told them that after finishing his duty, he went to his mistress. Gerald deliberately mentioned his mistress because he knew that if he said he was with his wife and children, he would get caught. He convinced his mistress to give false testimony for him. Gerald told the FBI that after his duty that night, he went to his mistress, Barbara. As Gerald had already instructed her on what to say, when the FBI questioned Barbara, she confirmed that Gerald had come to her place that night. In this way, Gerald arranged a false alibi for himself. The FBI also questioned other police officers, bank employees, and shop owners nearby, but found nothing. Since no evidence was turning up against Gerald and Tommy, they began to feel safe. Weeks turned into months, and months into a year, but the case remained unsolved, with the FBI finding no evidence. It seemed as though the case would never be solved and would be buried in a file. Although Gerald stayed quiet after the robbery, 2 corrupt officers, Tommy and Joe, made such foolish mistakes that the entire robbery was exposed. Gerald had instructed all gang members not to spend the stolen money yet, but Tommy and Joe started spending it on cocaine and women. As I told you earlier, Gerald had given all the jewelry to Joe Banks, so that after the case cooled down, they could sell it in the black market and split the money equally. But Joe misused the jewelry. He began gifting pieces of it to his girlfriend and other women, and even started selling it bit by bit. When Tommy found out about this, he confronted Joe, and their argument turned into a fight. Tommy fired his rifle at Joe. Because of their mistake, the entire perfect robbery was exposed. After Tommy shot Joe, the police arrested him. Joe survived despite being shot. Since the shooting involved 2 police officers, the case was handed over to the state police department. During their investigation, they searched Tommy and Joe's car. From Joe's car, police found a bag containing the stolen jewelry and 1 kilogram of cocaine. With the recovery of jewelry and cocaine from Joe's car, the entire case took a new direction. After 1 year, this was the first success the police got in the bank robbery case. When Gerald learned about Tommy and Joe, he instantly realized he was in huge trouble. While he was waiting for the case to cool down, his 2 companions' foolishness
had brought the case back into the spotlight. A few weeks later, Tommy's court trial began for shooting Joe. Joe himself was brought to court as an eyewitness. Tommy's lawyer argued to the judge that since cocaine and stolen jewelry had been recovered from Joe's car, and since Joe was a drug user and a thief, his testimony had no value in court. But in front of this argument, Joe made revelations that shocked the entire court. Joe confessed in court that he was indeed a drug user, and also revealed that on Memorial Day night, he himself had robbed the Depositor Trust Bank, along with Tom. He also confirmed that the jewelry belonged to that bank. In the trial, Tommy was found guilty of shooting Joe. Meanwhile, the FBI also took Joe into custody and started interrogating him. During interrogation, the FBI offered him a deal. If he gave them all the information about the robbery, they would reduce his sentence. Joe immediately agreed. Joe told the FBI that the mastermind of this robbery was Gerald, and that he also had a mistress named Barbara. The FBI again questioned Barbara and promised her protection. Barbara revealed that Gerald had indeed come to her house that night, but his clothes were completely covered in dirt. After Barbara's statement, the FBI arrested Gerald, but Gerald was confident that he had left behind no evidence, and that by hiring a good lawyer he would escape. In court, Gerald received the biggest shock when he saw his mistress Barbara standing in the witness box against him. Barbara told the court that on the night of the robbery, Gerald had come to her house wearing a uniform covered in dirt. She also revealed his true character, that he was a deeply corrupt officer. Barbara further testified that Gerald often told her that he would pull off one big job after which he would never have to work again. Before Gerald's lawyer could cross-examine Barbara, the FBI produced Joe in court. Since Joe had made a deal for a reduced sentence, he told the court everything about the robbery operation and revealed the names of all the people involved. After this, the court sentenced Gerald, Tommy, Francis, and Bucky to 30 to 40 years in prison. This was the story of those police officers who carried out one of America's almost perfect bank robberies, but got caught because of the foolishness of their own partners. How did you like this story? Write in the comment section and let us know. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.